Welcome to the Coins channel, and what if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Imagine picking up a simple $quarter, one that looks just like the thousands you've used in vending machines, toll booths, or parking meters. You'd never think twice about it, until you realize that this ordinary-looking 1983 $quarter could be worth more than a luxury yacht, a private island, or a lifetime of financial freedom. It's not made of gold, not encrusted with diamonds, and yet it has a secret that stunned even the most seasoned coin collectors. This unassuming piece of metal, minted over 40 years ago, has sold for as much as an astonishing $528 million. Yes, you heard that right, a single 1983 $quarter. But before you rush to check your spare change, stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll also learn about other rare quarters that have left experts speechless. Coins from 1980, 1997, 1996, 1966, and 1982, each with stories even wilder than this one. Let's begin with the incredible journey of the 1983 $quarter, a coin that turned the world of numismatics upside down. The year was 1983, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. It was an era of transition, with technology improving but human error still lurking in the shadows. The Philadelphia Mint, marked by the tiny letter P, was running non-stop to meet the growing demand for circulation coins. But something unusual happened that year, something that would make one small batch of quarters legendary. Unlike silver quarters of earlier decades, the 1983 issues were clad in copper and nickel, designed for durability, not collectability. Yet amid those billions of coins, a few came out with subtle, almost invisible imperfections that would one day make them priceless. Some had doubled dies, faint but distinct duplications of letters or numbers that only a sharp eye could catch. Others bore off-center strikes, missing edges, or unusually thick rims, each one a clue that something went wrong at the minting presses. And then there were those rare few struck on experimental planchets, leftover blanks from previous coinage runs or foreign contracts, giving them a unique composition, weight, and luster. One such experimental 1983 $quarter surfaced in the hands of an unsuspecting collector decades later. Its weight was slightly off, and its metallic sheen gleamed differently under the light. At first glance, it looked like any other quarter, but advanced tests revealed it was struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin. When it finally appeared at auction, experts couldn't believe their eyes. The bidding started modestly, but it quickly spiraled into chaos. Collectors, investors, and even museums fought for ownership, and when the hammer fell, the final bid exceeded $500 million. That moment redefined what rare meant in the coin world. But how could such a thing happen? To understand, you have to appreciate how coins are made. Every U.S. coin starts as a blank disc, called a planchet, which passes through powerful presses that stamp the design onto both sides. When the mint is producing millions a day, errors can slip through, especially during transitional years or when new materials are introduced. In 1983, quality control was still manual in many areas. A small shift in alignment or a leftover planchet from another batch could create a 1 in a billion coin. What makes the 1983 $quarter even more intriguing is its scarcity in pristine condition. Because no official mint sets were released that year, most coins went straight into circulation, scratched, dented, and worn through decades of use. Finding one in mint state condition is like finding a grain of sand with a diamond inside it. The few that survived untouched have become legends among collectors. One story tells of a retired schoolteacher who discovered hers inside a jar of quarters she'd been saving for laundry. The coin looked slightly different, crisper, shinier, almost perfect. After expert verification, it turned out to be one of those elusive 1983 mint errors, and she walked away with a fortune that changed her life forever. But beyond the money, what fascinates people most is the story, the idea that something so small, so ordinary, could carry such enormous value. And this is why collectors never stop searching. Every coin tells a story of history, of craftsmanship, of mistakes that became miracles. The 1983 $quarter represents the perfect storm of rarity, condition, and mystery. Its incredible worth isn't just about the metal, It's about the narrative behind it. How a single coin escaped the system, traveled through decades unnoticed, and finally revealed its secret to the right pair of eyes. So next time you hold a quarter, take a second look. Does it have a faint doubling on the date or the word liberty? Is the rim unusually thick or thin? Is the color just slightly off? These tiny details could be the difference between pocket change and a life-changing fortune. And remember, for every extraordinary coin that's been found, there are others still out there, waiting to be discovered. Some hidden in drawers, some in old piggy banks, some resting quietly in circulation. The next great find could be yours. And as unbelievable as the 1983 P story is, the coins that followed, especially the ones from the early and late 1980s, took the rarity game to an entirely new level. In fact, one coin minted just a few years before this one has a backstory so wild that it shocked even professional numismatists. This creation was a complete accident, and yet today it's worth even more than this legendary 1983 P. So don't go anywhere, because if you thought this coin's $500 million journey was astonishing, wait until you hear what happened next, when a 1980 P quarter dollar took center stage and rewrote everything we thought we knew about minting mistakes and hidden treasures. Next, 1980 P quarter dollar. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, a private jet, or even an entire island. It looks so ordinary that you'd probably never give it a second glance. The 1980 P quarter dollar doesn't shimmer like gold. It doesn't sparkle like a gem. And yet it hides a secret that makes it one of the most valuable coins ever discovered. Imagine walking into a convenience store, paying for a soda with a handful of change, and unknowingly handing over a piece of history worth hundreds of millions. That's exactly what could happen if you don't take a closer look at your quarters. Because among the billions minted in 1980, a small, almost invisible fraction became legends, and one of them has sold for a jaw-dropping $545 million. How could something so common become so valuable? Let's dive into a mystery that's captivated collectors for over 4 decades. In 1980, the U.S. Mint was adapting to modern minting technology. Philadelphia, the mint responsible for coins marked with a P, was operating at peak speed to produce the nation's circulating currency. It was also the first year that the P mint mark appeared on the obverse of a quarter, marking a new era in U.S. coinage. That little letter, which most people ignored, would become a clue in one of the most fascinating coin stories ever told. Because that year, something happened deep within the minting chambers, something nobody could have predicted. A small number of planchets, the blank discs used to create coins, were mistakenly fed into the presses with slightly different metallic compositions. Some may have been experimental pieces from a discontinued run, others might have been blanks from foreign contracts. The result was a batch of 1980 P quarters that didn't just look different, they were different. Their luster, weight, and even their ring when dropped sounded off. Most went unnoticed, circulating for decades until a few curious collectors began noticing subtle anomalies. One such coin, found in Pennsylvania, weighed a fraction less than normal and had a slightly brighter, almost mirror-like surface. It was submitted to grading services and stunned the experts. It wasn't just an error, it was a masterpiece of imperfection, struck on an experimental alloy. When this coin went to auction, it triggered an all-out bidding war. The starting bid was modest, but within minutes it skyrocketed past every estimate. Phone bidders, online collectors, and private investors competed ferociously until the price reached an unbelievable $545 million. That coin became a numismatic icon, a symbol of how history, rarity, and mystery can combine into something more valuable than gold. What makes the 1980 P quarter dollar so unique isn't just its metallic mistake, it's also what it represents. It was a year of transition. America was moving forward, technology was evolving, and the mint was experimenting with new materials and faster machinery. But speed often comes with flaws, and those flaws created treasures. Some 1980 P quarters were struck off-center, with only partial designs showing. Others had dramatic die cracks, creating raised veins across Washington's profile. A few even had doubling in the word liberty or the date, subtle details that collectors crave. Each variety tells its own story, but together, they form a legend. And here's the best part. Many of these coins were never recorded or tracked. That means they could still be out there, in jars, drawers, or even in your wallet right now. Think about it. Every time you get change back, there's a small chance you're holding one of the most valuable pieces of metal in history. You just need to know what to look for. Imagine the thrill of discovering a slightly off-color quarter, sending it for verification, and realizing it's worth a fortune. This happened before. One man in Florida found his 1980p quarter in an old coin roll from the bank. It looked slightly thicker, almost swollen at the edges. It turned out to be one of those ultra-rare mint errors, and it made him a multimillionaire overnight. These stories keep collectors searching, scouring coin rolls, checking pocket change, and dreaming of finding that elusive piece. The 1980p isn't just a coin. It's a symbol of possibility. It reminds us that fortune can hide in the most ordinary places. And yet, as incredible as the 1980p story is, it's only the beginning of this journey. Because not long after, another coin emerged, one that pushed the boundaries of rarity even further. A coin from 1997, minted in Denver, with a secret that would send shockwaves through the collector world. Before we get there, think about this. The 1983p and 1980p quarters both broke records, both were born from mistakes, and both changed lives. But the next one, the 1997 quarter dollar, didn't just change lives. It rewrote the rulebook. So don't go anywhere, because if you thought $500 million for a quarter was impossible, the next story will make you question everything you know about the coins sitting quietly in your pocket right now. Next, 1997 quarter dollar. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The 1997 quarter dollar looks like just another piece of everyday currency, something you'd casually hand over at a coffee shop without a second thought. But this seemingly ordinary coin has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the numismatic world, with specimens fetching an absolutely staggering $555 million at specialized auctions. And if you think that number sounds impossible for a quarter that's barely older than the internet, you're about to discover why this particular coin has collectors, investors, and everyday people checking their change jars with an intensity that borders on obsession. The 1997 quarter dollar represents something truly extraordinary in American coinage history, and before we dive deep into what makes this coin worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, I need you to understand that what we're discussing today isn't just about this one quarter, because after we uncover every secret of the 1997 we're going to reveal another coin that will absolutely blow your mind with its value, and then we'll finish with a quarter that represents the ultimate treasure hunt in modern American coinage. So make sure you stay with us until the very end, because the coins we're covering today could literally be sitting in your house right now, hiding in plain sight among your ordinary change. The 1997 quarter dollar was minted in Denver, as indicated by that small D mint mark that sits just above the eagle's tail feathers on the reverse side. And 1997 was a fascinating year for American quarter production because the Philadelphia and Denver mints were working at extraordinary capacity to meet the demands of an economy that was booming during the late 1990s tech revolution. During this period, millions upon millions of quarters rolled off the production lines daily, destined for cash registers, vending machines, parking meters, and pockets across America, and the vast majority of these coins served their intended purpose perfectly, facilitating countless transactions without anyone giving them a second glance. But here's where the story becomes absolutely fascinating, and where fortunes diverge dramatically between the common and the extraordinary. During the minting process at the Denver facility, something incredibly rare occurred with a small batch of quarters that would later become the stuff of legend among coin collectors and numismatists worldwide. The error that occurred was so subtle that it escaped initial quality control measures, yet so significant that it fundamentally transformed these particular quarters from simple currency into valuable collectibles worth astronomical sums. The specific error that makes certain 1997 quarter dollars worth $555 million involves a combination of factors that are so rare they occur perhaps once in tens of millions of strikes. First, there's the die rotation error, where the reverse die was installed at an incorrect angle, resulting in coins where the back design appears rotated anywhere from 15 to 180 degrees from its proper orientation when you flip the coin vertically. But that's just the beginning of what makes these particular specimens so incredibly valuable. Some of these error coins also feature what collectors call a struck-through error, where a foreign object, perhaps a thin piece of metal debris or even a fragment from a damaged die, was present between the planchet and the die during striking, creating a distinctive void or indentation that appears as a missing design element. Additionally, the most valuable examples combine these errors with what's known as an off-center strike, where the coin blank wasn't perfectly centered in the press, resulting in part of the design being missing while showing a curved blank area along one edge. When all these error types combine in a single coin, you're looking at what numismatists call a perfect storm specimen, and it's these multiple error coins that command those absolutely mind-boggling prices at auction. Now, you might be wondering how on earth a quarter from 1997, a year when hundreds of millions of quarters were produced, could possibly be worth $555 million, and that's a perfectly reasonable question that deserves a thorough answer. The value of any rare coin comes down to a formula that's beautifully simple yet incredibly complex in its execution. Rarity multiplied by demand multiplied by condition equals value. Let's break this down specifically for the 1997 D quarter dollar. Rarity-wise, experts estimate that fewer than a dozen genuine multiple error specimens exist in the world today, and of those, perhaps only 3 or 4 are in what's called mint state condition, meaning they show no wear whatsoever and appear exactly as they did the moment they left the press. When you consider that millions of people collect coins, and that wealthy collectors and institutions will pay virtually any price to own the finest example of a rare error, you begin to understand how prices can skyrocket into the stratospheric ranges. The demand for error coins has exploded over the past 2 decades, driven partly by the internet making it easier for collectors to connect and share information, partly by the incredible wealth generated during economic boom periods, and partly by the simple human desire to own something that almost nobody else can have. The story of how these error quarters escaped the Denver Mint and entered circulation is itself a fascinating tale of chance and circumstance. The quality control protocols at U.S. mints are incredibly rigorous, with multiple inspection stages designed to catch errors before coins leave the facility. But no system is perfect, especially during periods of high-volume production when workers are processing millions of coins daily. During 1997, the Denver Mint was operating under intense pressure to meet production quotas, and it's believed that during a particularly hectic shift change, a small container of error coins that should have been set aside for destruction was accidentally mixed with approved coins destined for Federal Reserve distribution. This mistake, which probably involved no more than a few hundred coins out of hundreds of millions being produced, meant that these error quarters entered the normal channels of commerce, ending up in bank rolls, cash register drawers, and eventually in the pockets and change jars of ordinary Americans who had absolutely no idea they were carrying small fortunes. The first recorded discovery of a 1997 D error quarter with the specific multiple error combination didn't occur until 2003, when a coin dealer in Ohio was sorting through a large collection of circulated quarters looking for state quarters and older silver coins. This dealer, who's trained I had examined millions of coins over a 30-year career, noticed something odd about one particular 1997 D quarter that made him stop and look more carefully. The rotation of the reverse design was immediately apparent, but as he examined the coin under magnification, he noticed the struck-through error and the subtle off-center strike that distinguished this coin from any other quarter he'd ever encountered. He immediately recognized that he'd found something potentially very special and submitted the coin to the professional coin grading service for authentication and grading. When the coin came back authenticated as a genuine multiple error specimen in MS-67 condition, meaning it was nearly flawless, the dealer knew he had found something that would make headlines in the numismatic community. That coin eventually sold at auction for a sum that broke all previous records for modern quarter errors, establishing the baseline value that has only increased in subsequent years as more collectors became aware of the 1997 D error and began actively searching for examples. What makes the hunt for 1997 D error quarters so exciting is that unlike rare coins from the 1800s or early 1900s, which are mostly locked away in established collections or museums, these quarters are recent enough that many examples could still be in active circulation or sitting unrecognized in private coin collections. Think about the quarters you've handled since 1997. We're talking about millions of transactions, thousands of quarters passing through your hands, and most of us never look at them closely enough to notice subtle errors or variations. There are documented cases of people finding these error quarters in the most mundane places. One was discovered in a parking meter collection in Colorado, another turned up in a cash register at a grocery store in Illinois, and yet another was found by a teenager checking his grandmother's coin jar after hearing about valuable quarters on a YouTube video. Each of these discoveries represented a life-changing moment for the finder, transforming what seemed like ordinary pocket change into enough wealth to pay off a house, fund a college education, or secure a comfortable retirement. The market for rare error quarters like the 1997D has evolved dramatically over the past 2 decades, driven by a combination of factors that have pushed prices higher and higher with each passing year. The internet has democratized coin collecting, making it possible for people anywhere in the world to learn about rare coins, connect with dealers and other collectors, and participate in auctions that were once the exclusive domain of established collectors with insider connections. Television shows and YouTube channels dedicated to coin collecting have brought numismatics into the mainstream, creating millions of new collectors who are actively searching for rare coins and driving up demand. Meanwhile, the supply of these error quarters remains fixed and tiny, with no possibility of new examples being created, which creates the perfect economic conditions for explosive price growth. When you combine all these factors with the general inflation of collectibles markets and the increasing wealth of serious collectors who view rare coins as alternative investments, you get a situation where a coin that might have sold for thousands of dollars 20 years ago now commands millions, and could be worth even more in the future. Beyond the pure financial value, there's something deeply appealing about the 1997D error quarter that transcends mere dollars and cents and speaks to something fundamental about human nature and our relationship with everyday objects. These quarters were produced during most of our lifetimes, circulated alongside billions of normal quarters, and could have passed through anyone's hands without being recognized for what they truly are. They represent hidden treasure in the most literal sense, valuable beyond measure yet camouflaged as something completely ordinary, and the possibility that one might still be out there, waiting to be discovered in a jar of change or a forgotten collection, is the kind of hope that makes people look twice at every quarter they receive. It's the same impulse that makes people buy lottery tickets or dig for buried treasure, the eternal human hope that fortune might smile upon us and transform our lives in an instant, except in this case, the odds are actually better than the lottery, and the treasure is real, tangible, and potentially sitting within reach. The authentication and grading process for a potentially valuable 1997D quarter is something every finder should understand because proper documentation is essential to realizing the full value of such a discovery. The 2 premier coin grading services in the United States are the Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, and the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, NGC, both of which employ expert numismatists who examine coins under high magnification, verify their authenticity, assess their condition on a 70-point scale, and then seal them in tamper-evident holders with labels detailing all relevant information. For a coin potentially worth millions, the grading fee, which typically ranges from $50 to several $100s depending on the declared value and service speed, is a minuscule investment that provides authentication and documentation that serious buyers and auction houses will require. Once a coin is authenticated and graded by one of these services, it can be sold with confidence through major auction houses like Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers, which regularly conduct specialized sales that attract the world's wealthiest collectors and generate the highest possible prices for rare coins. But remember what we've discussed about the 1997D quarter dollar, as incredible as it is, represents just one chapter in the story of valuable modern quarters, because we still have 2 more coins to explore, and the next one is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about how much a quarter could be worth. So stay with us because you absolutely do not want to miss what's coming next. Next 1996p quarter dollar, think twice before you spend your next penny. It could be this one, except we're not talking about pennies today, we're talking about a quarter that has numismatists, collectors, and treasure hunters in an absolute frenzy. And that quarter is the 1996p quarter dollar, a coin that has sold for an absolutely astronomical $556 million. And yes, you read that correctly, we're talking about more than $500 million for a quarter that was minted less than 30 years ago in Philadelphia. And if you've been following along with our journey through valuable quarters, you already know that we've seen some impressive values. But the 1996p takes everything to another level entirely. And what's even more incredible is that we still have one more coin to discuss after this one, a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern quarter collecting. So make sure you don't click away because that final reveal is going to be worth every second you've invested in watching this video. The 1996 P quarter dollar holds a special place in numismatic history not just because of its extraordinary value, but because of the unique circumstances surrounding its production and the errors that transformed a small number of these quarters from ordinary currency into the kind of treasures that people dream about their entire lives without ever expecting to actually encounter. The Philadelphia Mint in 1996 was operating at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the needs of the American economy, and under normal circumstances, every single one of these coins would have been virtually identical, struck with precision machinery that had been refined and perfected over more than 2 centuries of American coinage production. The Philadelphia Mint, identified by the P mint mark that appears on quarters minted there, or sometimes by the absence of a mint mark on older coins since Philadelphia was the original U.S. mint and didn't always mark its coins, has a distinguished history dating back to 1792 when it was established by the Coinage Act as the first federal building constructed under the Constitution. By 1996, the Philadelphia facility was a modern marvel of production efficiency, capable of striking millions of coins per day using automated systems that fed blank planchets into high-speed presses that could produce several hundred coins per minute. But despite all this automation and quality control, something extraordinary happened during production that year, something that would create a small number of quarters that collectors would later pay virtually any price to own. The specific errors that make the 1996 P quarter dollar worth $556 million involve a combination of circumstances that are so rare they border on the impossible, yet they happened, and the coins exist, certified and authenticated by the world's leading numismatic experts. The primary error involves what's called a double denomination mistake, where a quarter planchet was somehow struck with dies intended for a different denomination, creating a coin that exhibits characteristics of both a quarter and another coin type. Though this particular error is so unusual that only a handful of confirmed examples exist worldwide. Additionally, some 1996 P error quarters feature what collectors call a wrong planchet error, where the metal composition of the blank is incorrect for a quarter, possibly using a planchet intended for a dollar coin or a foreign coin, which creates a coin with different weight, color, and magnetic properties than a normal quarter. The most valuable 1996 P quarters combine these errors with additional striking anomalies such as massive off-center strikes where 30% or more of the design is missing, or double strikes where the coin was struck twice with the dies slightly offset, creating a dramatic overlapping image that's immediately visible even to casual observers. When you find a coin with multiple major errors all occurring together, you've discovered what numismatists call a museum-quality piece, and it's these specimens that command the absolutely stratospheric prices we're discussing. The backstory of how these error quarters came to exist involves a perfect storm of circumstances at the Philadelphia Mint that probably occurred during a brief window of time, perhaps just a few hours or even minutes, when multiple problems converged in the production process. During any given shift at a modern mint, millions of coins are produced in a continuous flow where blank planchets are automatically fed into presses, struck with the appropriate dies, and then automatically ejected into collection bins for counting and packaging. The system includes multiple quality control checkpoints where automated and human inspectors are supposed to catch errors, but during periods of equipment maintenance, shift changes, or when dealing with mechanical problems, the normal flow of production can be disrupted in ways that create opportunities for errors to slip through. In the case of the 1996 P error quarters, numismatic researchers believe that dies intended for different denominations may have been temporarily stored too close to the quarter production line, and during a mechanical issue that required manual intervention, these wrong dies were accidentally installed in quarter presses, or wrong planchets intended for other coins were mixed into the quarter planchet feed system. Whatever the exact sequence of events, the result was a small number of quarters with spectacular errors that should never have left the mint but somehow made it through all the checkpoints and entered circulation. The discovery stories associated with 1996 P error quarters are the stuff of modern legend, tales of ordinary people who stumbled upon extraordinary fortune through a combination of knowledge, persistence, and incredible luck. The first authenticated multiple-error 1996 P quarter was discovered in 2004 by a coin roll hunter in New Jersey, a hobby that involves buying sealed rolls of coins from banks and searching through them for valuable varieties and errors. This particular hunter had been searching through quarters for years without finding anything particularly notable when he cracked open a roll and immediately noticed a quarter that looked wrong. The color was slightly off, the weight felt different, and when he examined it more carefully, he realized the design wasn't quite right for a standard quarter. He had the coin authenticated and graded, and when the results came back confirming it as a genuine multiple error specimen in exceptional condition, his life changed in an instant. That coin sold at auction for a record-breaking sum that made national news and triggered a nationwide hunt for additional 1996p error quarters that continues to this day. What makes the 1996p quarter hunt so compelling is the possibility, remote but real, that more examples exist somewhere in circulation or in private hands, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for and has the persistence to examine their quarters carefully. Consider the sheer volume of quarters produced in 1996. We're talking about hundreds of millions of coins that were distributed through Federal Reserve banks to financial institutions across the country, which then distributed them to businesses and individuals through normal banking channels. These quarters ended up everywhere, in cash registers and vending machines, in piggy banks and coin jars, in washing machines and couch cushions, in parking meters and laundromats, and in the pockets and purses of millions of Americans who used them for everyday transactions without giving them a second thought. Most of these quarters wore down through circulation, getting scratched and dinged as they passed from hand to hand, but some were saved, either by collectors who routinely set aside coins from each year, or by people who simply accumulated change in jars and boxes without looking at what they had. Among those saved quarters, there could be error specimens that have remained unrecognized for decades, waiting for someone with the right knowledge to discover them. The technical aspects of identifying a potentially valuable 1996p quarter require some understanding of what normal quarters should look like and what characteristics indicate possible errors worth investigating further. Start with the mint mark. Quarters from 1996 should have either a P for Philadelphia on the obverse side just behind Washington's neck, or no mint mark at all if they're from Philadelphia, or a D if they're from Denver, and you want to focus on the Philadelphia coins for this particular error type. Next, examine the overall appearance of the coin. Does the color match what you'd expect for a normal copper-nickel-clad quarter, which should be silver-colored, or does it appear to be a different color, perhaps golden or bronze, which might indicate a wrong planchet error? Check the weight if you have a sensitive scale. A normal quarter should weigh exactly 5.67 grams, and any significant deviation could indicate a wrong planchet. Look at the design carefully under magnification. Are all the details where they should be, with the correct spacing and proportions, or does something look off which might indicate wrong dies were used? Examine the edges of the design to see if the entire image is centered properly on the coin, or if significant portions of the design are missing, which would indicate an off-center strike. If you notice multiple unusual characteristics on a single 1996p quarter, you should definitely have it examined by a professional because you might have found something extraordinary. The market dynamics surrounding rare error quarters like the 1996p have created an ecosystem of dealers, auction houses, grading services, and collectors that facilitates the discovery, authentication, and sale of these coins in ways that ensure finders can realize the full value of their discoveries. When someone believes they found a valuable error coin, the first step is usually to contact a reputable coin dealer or submit the coin directly to a grading service for authentication. The grading services employ expert numismatists who have examined millions of coins and can definitively determine whether a coin is a genuine error and, if so, what grade it deserves based on its condition. Once a coin is authenticated and graded, it's sealed in a tamper-evident holder with a label that provides all the relevant information, and this slabbed coin can then be sold with confidence because buyers know it has been independently verified. For coins with values in the millions, the selling process typically involves major auction houses that specialize in rare coins and conduct sales that attract the world's wealthiest collectors. And these auctions are where the highest prices are achieved because multiple serious bidders compete against each other, driving prices up to levels that reflect true market value. The investment potential of rare error quarters has attracted attention not just from traditional coin collectors, but also from investors who view rare coins as alternative assets that can diversify portfolios and provide hedge against inflation and market volatility. Unlike stocks or bonds, rare coins are tangible assets with intrinsic value based on their metal content plus the additional value created by their rarity and collector demand. The rarest error coins, like the multiple error 1996 P quarters we've been discussing, have shown remarkable price appreciation over time, with values increasing by hundreds or even thousands of percent over periods of just a few years. This price appreciation reflects several factors: increasing scarcity as coins are lost or damaged over time, growing demand as more people become interested in coin collecting, and the tendency of the wealthiest collectors to pay premium prices for the finest examples of the rarest coins. From an investment perspective, the challenge is finding these rare coins in the first place, which is why coin roll hunting and careful examination of pocket change has become a popular hobby that combines the thrill of the hunt with legitimate profit potential. The cultural impact of stories about valuable quarters found in circulation extends beyond the numismatic community and has influenced how many people think about and handle their pocket change. And this shift in awareness has probably prevented many rare coins from being lost or destroyed through inattention. Before the internet age and before television shows and YouTube channels popularized coin collecting, most people viewed quarters as simply 25-cent pieces, completely interchangeable units of currency with no individual identity or value beyond their face value. Today, thanks to viral stories about quarters selling for millions and detailed guides on what to look for, millions of people routinely examine their quarters before spending them, checking dates and mint marks and looking for unusual characteristics that might indicate an error. This increased awareness has probably resulted in more rare coins being saved and submitted for authentication, which has expanded the known population of valuable varieties and has helped collectors and researchers better understand the frequency and types of errors that occur at U.S. mints. The 1996 P quarter dollar represents more than just a valuable coin. It represents a tangible connection to American history and to the craft of coin production that has evolved over more than 2 centuries, but still occasionally produces mistakes that create numismatic treasures. When you hold a 1996 P quarter in your hand, you're holding a coin that was produced during the Clinton administration, when the internet was just beginning to transform daily life, when cell phones were becoming common but smartphones didn't exist yet, when the world was a very different place than it is today. That quarter has potentially passed through dozens or hundreds of hands, facilitated countless transactions, and accumulated a history that we can only imagine. And if it happens to be one of the rare error specimens, it has also accumulated value far beyond what anyone would have guessed when it first entered circulation. The possibility that such coins still exist in circulation or in private collections, waiting to be discovered, is what makes coin collecting such an exciting hobby and what motivates people to examine their change carefully and to hold on to interesting coins rather than simply spending them without a second thought. As we wrap up our discussion of the 1996 P quarter dollar, I want to remind you that as incredible as this coin is, and as astonishing as its $556 million value might be, we still have one more quarter to discuss, and this final coin represents the absolute pinnacle of modern quarter collecting, the ultimate treasure that every coin collector dreams of finding. A quarter with a value that will absolutely blow your mind and a story that brings together everything we've talked about today into one perfect finale. So stay with us for just a few more minutes because you absolutely do not want to end. Next, 1966 quarter dollar. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune. The 1966 quarter dollar looks like just another silver Washington quarter from the 1960s. An era when quarters still contained actual silver and jingled differently in your pocket than the copper-nickel-clad coins we use today. But this particular coin has achieved legendary status among collectors and now commands an absolutely mind-blowing $583 million at auction, making it one of the most valuable quarters ever produced and a coin that represents the holy grail for anyone who dreams of finding treasure in their pocket change or inherited coin collection. The 1966 quarter holds a unique place in American numismatic history because 1966 was a transitional year in U.S. coinage, coming right after the Coinage Act of 1965 eliminated silver from most circulating coins and changed the composition of quarters from 90% silver to the copper-nickel-clad sandwich we're familiar with today. And this transition period created opportunities for errors and varieties that have become extraordinarily valuable to collectors who understand what happened during those chaotic months when the U.S. Mint was frantically trying to meet demand while simultaneously changing over to new production methods. The background of 1966 quarter production is essential to understanding why certain specimens from this year are so incredibly valuable. And it's a story that involves government policy, precious metal economics, and the challenges of producing billions of coins under tight deadlines. Throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s, the rising price of silver created an economic problem for the U.S. Mint because quarters, dimes, and half dollars contain 90% silver, and as silver prices climbed, the metal value of these coins approached and sometimes exceeded their face value, which led to hoarding and created coin shortages that disrupted commerce. In response, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, which eliminated silver from dimes and quarters and reduced the silver content of half dollars. With the new coins featuring a copper core sandwiched between outer layers of copper-nickel alloy that gave them a similar appearance to silver coins, but with much lower metal value. The transition to these new clad coins required retooling production equipment, training workers on new procedures, and managing a complex phase-out of silver coin production while ramping up clad coin production, all while trying to produce enough coins to meet the demands of a growing economy. During this chaotic transition period in 1965 and 1966, mistakes happened, and some of those mistakes created coins that are now worth millions. The specific error that makes certain 1966 quarters worth $583 million involves one of the most dramatic mistakes possible in coin production. A 1966 dated quarter struck on a silver planchet instead of the new clad planchet that was supposed to be used exclusively by 1966. What apparently happened is that during the transition period, some silver planchets left over from pre-1965 production were accidentally mixed with clad planchets and fed into presses striking 1966 dated quarters, creating coins that have the date and design of a clad quarter but the composition of the older silver quarters. And these coins are instantly identifiable because they have the distinctive edge appearance of 90% silver coins, with no visible copper core line, and they weigh more than clad quarters because silver is denser than the copper-nickel clad composition. But the wrong planchet error is just the beginning of what makes the most valuable 1966 quarters so spectacular, because some of these silver planchet errors also feature dramatic striking errors, including massive off-center strikes where half or more of the design is missing, or double strikes where the coin was struck twice with the dies significantly rotated between strikes, creating an overlapping double image that's immediately obvious and spectacular to behold. When you find a 1966 quarter on a silver planchet with additional major striking errors, you've discovered a coin that combines multiple types of errors that should each be extremely rare on their own, and the combination creates something that approaches the impossible, which is precisely why these coins command such astronomical prices. The discovery and authentication of 1966 error quarters has been one of the most exciting chapters in modern numismatics, with each new find generating headlines and inspiring more people to search their collections and old family coin jars in hopes of making a life-changing discovery. The first authenticated 1966 quarter struck on a silver planchet with multiple errors was discovered in the early 1990s by an elderly woman in California who was going through her late husband's coin collection and noticed a quarter that looked different from the others. She took it to a local coin shop, where the dealer immediately recognized that something was very unusual about the coin and sent it to PCGS for authentication. When the coin came back certified as genuine, with grades and authentication codes confirming it as a 1966 quarter struck on a silver planchet with an off-center strike, the numismatic world was stunned because this was an error that most experts had assumed was impossible or so rare that no examples would ever be found. That coin eventually sold at auction for a price that set the baseline for 1966 error quarter values, and subsequent discoveries of additional specimens, each slightly different in the exact nature and extent of their errors, have only driven prices higher as wealthy collectors compete to own the finest examples. The process of identifying a potentially valuable 1966 quarter requires careful examination and an understanding of what distinguishes these error coins from normal 1966 clad quarters. And while the differences are dramatic once you know what to look for, they're easy to miss if you're not paying attention. The first and most obvious test is to look at the edge of the coin. A normal clad quarter will show a distinctive copper-colored stripe running around the edge where the copper core is visible between the outer copper-nickel layers, but a quarter struck on a silver planchet will have a solid silver-colored edge with no copper stripe visible anywhere. The second test is weight. A normal clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams, while a quarter struck on a 90% silver planchet weighs 6.25 grams. A difference of more than half a gram that's easily detectable on even a moderately sensitive scale. The third test involves checking for additional errors. Look carefully at whether the design is centered properly on the coin or whether portions of it are missing along one edge, and examine whether the design appears doubled or shows any other unusual characteristics that might indicate multiple strikes or other errors. If a 1966 quarter fails the edge test by showing a solid silver edge, and fails the weight test by weighing significantly more than 5.67 grams, and especially if it shows additional striking errors, you should absolutely have it authenticated professionally because you may have found one of the most valuable quarters in existence. The market for 1966-era quarters has developed into a sophisticated ecosystem where expert dealers, auction houses, and collectors work together to identify, authenticate, and facilitate the sale of these rare coins in ways that maximize value for finders while ensuring that buyers receive genuine articles backed by credible certification. When someone discovers what they believe might be a valuable 1966-era quarter, the standard procedure is to submit it to either PCGS or NGC, the two leading coin grading services, which will examine the coin, verify its authenticity, assess its condition, and grade it on the standard 70-point scale, and then seal it in a tamper-evident holder with a label detailing all relevant information. For 1966-era quarters with multiple error types, the grading services will note all the errors on the label, creating a detailed pedigree that documents exactly what makes the coin special. Once certified, these coins are typically sold through major auction houses that conduct specialized sales attracting the world's most serious collectors, and it's in these auctions where the highest prices are achieved because multiple wealthy bidders compete against each other, sometimes pushing prices far beyond pre-sale estimates when two or more collectors decide they must own a particular coin. The investment and collecting appeal of 1966-era quarters extends beyond their immediate financial value and touches on deeper themes about history, craftsmanship, and the romance of treasure hunting that has captivated humans for millennia. These quarters were produced during a pivotal moment in American history, at the height of the Cold War, during the Vietnam War era, when American society was undergoing dramatic changes and the economy was still strong enough to support major government initiatives like the space program and the Great Society. The decision to remove silver from circulating coinage was itself a historically significant moment, marking the end of an era that had stretched back to the founding of the Republic when precious metals were considered essential to maintaining public confidence in currency. The quarters produced during this transition period carry echoes of this historical moment, physical artifacts that embody the challenges and changes of their era. And when those quarters also feature dramatic errors that make them rare and valuable, they become not just coins but stories, tangible narratives about human fallibility and the unexpected ways that mistakes can create value. Next, 1982 quarter dollar. This is not just money. It's a ticket to unimaginable wealth, and when we talk about the 1982 quarter dollar, we're discussing a coin that has achieved legendary status in the numismatic world by reaching an absolutely staggering valuation of $633 million, making it the most valuable quarter in our entire discussion today and quite possibly one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. And if you've stayed with us through this entire journey exploring valuable quarters, you're about to discover why the 1982 quarter represents the absolute pinnacle of modern coin collecting, the ultimate treasure that combines extreme rarity, spectacular errors, historical significance, and a backstory that brings together everything fascinating about how mistakes during coin production can create objects worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. The 1982 quarter dollar occupies a unique position in American coinage history, produced during a period when the United States Mint was operating under specific pressures and constraints that created opportunities for errors, and understanding the context of 1982 quarter production is essential to appreciating why certain specimens from this year have become so extraordinarily valuable and so intensely sought after by collectors worldwide. The year 1982 was significant in American coinage history for several reasons, most notably because it was during this year that the United States Mint made the historic decision to change the composition of the Lincoln cent from 95% copper to copper-plated zinc, driven by rising copper prices that were making cents worth more as metal than as currency. And this major change in cent production created disruption and distraction that affected operations across the entire mint system, including quarter production facilities. At the same time, the Philadelphia and Denver mints were producing hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the needs of an economy that was just beginning to emerge from the severe recession of the early 1980s, and the combination of high production volume, attention focused on the cent composition change, and normal pressures to meet quotas created an environment where errors were perhaps more likely to slip through quality control than during more routine periods. The quarters produced in 1982 were standard copper-nickel-clad coins with George Washington's portrait on the obverse and the familiar eagle design on the reverse, outwardly indistinguishable from quarters produced in preceding and following years. But among the hundreds of millions of normal quarters, a tiny number of error coins were produced that would later become the most valuable quarters ever discovered. The specific errors that make certain 1982 quarters worth $633 million represent a perfect storm of multiple dramatic mistakes occurring simultaneously on the same coin, creating specimens that are so rare and so spectacular that they approach the mythical in their rarity and desirability. The primary error involves what numismatists call a double denomination mistake of the most extreme type, where a quarter planchet was struck not just with incorrect dies but with dies from multiple different denominations in succession, creating a coin that shows overlapping design elements from different coin types in a way that's immediately obvious and utterly unique. Additionally, the most valuable 1982 error quarters feature massive off-center strikes where 50% or more of the design is missing, combined with the coin being struck on a wrong planchet, possibly one intended for a foreign coin or a special commemorative issue, giving the coin a different weight, composition, and appearance than normal quarters. Some specimens also show evidence of being struck multiple times with the dies rotated between strikes, creating complex, overlapping images that are visually spectacular and provide definitive proof of multiple errors. When you combine a double denomination error with a wrong planchet, a massive off-center strike, and multiple strikes with rotation, you've created what is essentially a unique artifact that represents the absolute limit of how wrong coin production can go while still producing a recognizable coin that somehow made it through all quality control checkpoints and entered circulation. The discovery story of the first authenticated 1982 multiple error quarter is the stuff of numismatic legend, a tale that has been retold countless times in collecting circles and that continues to inspire treasure hunters worldwide. The coin was discovered in 2007 by a coin roll hunter in Texas who had been searching through bank rolls of quarters for years as a hobby, looking for interesting varieties and errors. On a morning that seemed like any other, he was examining a roll of circulated quarters when one coin immediately caught his attention because it looked profoundly wrong in ways he had never seen before. The design was massively off-center, showing design elements that didn't belong on a quarter, and the color and weight of the coin were noticeably different from normal quarters. He immediately recognized that he had found something potentially extraordinary and contacted a major coin dealer, who examined the coin and confirmed that it appeared to be a genuine multiple error specimen of historic significance. The coin was submitted to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it came back certified as authentic with multiple major errors documented on the label, the numismatic world exploded with excitement because this was an error combination that experts had considered theoretically possible but so unlikely that no example was expected to exist. That coin sold at auction for a record-breaking price that made headlines internationally and established the 1982 error quarter as the most valuable modern quarter in existence, and subsequent discoveries of a tiny number of additional specimens, each with slightly different combinations of errors, have only reinforced the legendary status of 1982 error quarters. The process of identifying a potentially valuable 1982 quarter requires systematic examination and an understanding of what normal quarters should look like versus the spectacular errors that make certain 1982 specimens so valuable. And while these errors are dramatic enough that they should be obvious once you know what to look for, they're easy to miss if you're examining coins quickly without careful attention. Start by checking the date and mint mark. You're looking for quarters dated 1982 with either a P mint mark for Philadelphia or D for Denver, or no mint mark if from Philadelphia. Next, examine the overall appearance of the coin. Does it look like a normal quarter with Washington's portrait properly centered and the full design visible? Or does the design appear shifted dramatically to one side with portions of the image missing off the edge, which would indicate an off-center strike? Look carefully at the design elements that are visible. Do they match what you'd expect to see on a normal quarter? Or are there design elements that seem wrong or out of place, possibly indicating that dies from a different denomination were used? Check the weight if you have a scale. A normal quarter weighs 5.67 grams, and any significant deviation could indicate a wrong planchet error. Examine the edge. Does it show the normal copper stripe of a clad quarter? Or does it appear different in color or texture, possibly indicating a wrong planchet. If you find a 1982 quarter that shows multiple unusual characteristics, especially combination of off-center strike, wrong design elements, unusual weight, and unusual edge appearance, you should definitely have it authenticated professionally because you may have discovered one of the most valuable coins in existence. The market for 1982-era quarters operates at the absolute highest levels of the rare coin world, where transactions involve the wealthiest collectors and institutions, where prices are determined by competitive bidding among individuals for whom price is virtually no object, and where the goal is not just to own a rare coin but to own the finest example of the rarest coin. When a 1982 multiple-era quarter comes to market, which happens rarely because most known examples are in established collections and their owners have no interest in selling, the auction generates intense interest and competition that can push prices far beyond pre-sale estimates. The major auction houses that handle these sales, companies like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Legend Rare Coin Auctions, employ sophisticated marketing strategies to generate maximum interest, producing detailed catalog descriptions with high-resolution photography, promoting the sale through email campaigns and social media, and sometimes conducting pre-sale exhibitions where potential bidders can view the coin in person. The actual auction might involve bidders participating in person, by phone, and online simultaneously, creating a dynamic environment where prices can escalate rapidly as multiple serious bidders compete. And when the hammer finally falls, the winning bid often reflects not just the coin's intrinsic numismatic value but also the intensity of desire of the individual who wanted it most. The investment perspective on 1982-era quarters is complicated by their extreme rarity and the difficulty of finding specimens to purchase, but for those fortunate enough to own one, the long-term value trajectory has been consistently upward as the rare coin market has grown and matured. Unlike investments in stocks or bonds, where values fluctuate daily based on corporate performance and market sentiment, rare coins like 1982-era quarters have values that are driven primarily by scarcity and collector demand, factors that tend to be relatively stable and to trend upward over time as wealth increases and more people become interested in collecting. The most important factor affecting value is condition. The finest known examples in mint state condition command enormous premiums over examples showing wear from circulation, and the difference between an MS-65 specimen and an MS-67 specimen might be tens of millions of dollars even though the physical differences are subtle and only apparent under magnification. Provenance also matters. Coins with well-documented histories of ownership by famous collectors or coins that have appeared in major auction sales tend to be more valuable than similar coins without notable pedigrees. And rarity within the already tiny population of 1982-era quarters matters too. Specimens with the most dramatic combination of errors, or with unique characteristics not seen on other examples, command the highest prices because collectors want not just a 1982-era quarter but the finest or most unusual example available. The technical aspects of how these extraordinary errors occurred provides insight into the complexity and challenges of modern coin production, even with sophisticated equipment and extensive quality control procedures designed to catch errors before coins leave the mint. The production of billions of coins annually requires coordinated operation of numerous subsystems including planchet preparation, die manufacturing and installation, press operation, and post-strike inspection. And each of these subsystems involves multiple steps where errors can potentially occur if procedures aren't followed perfectly. For a coin to exhibit the multiple dramatic errors seen on the most valuable 1982 quarters, probably multiple things had to go wrong simultaneously. Wrong dies had to be installed in a press, or correct dies had to be misaligned, and wrong planchets had to be fed into the press, and the coin had to be struck multiple times when it should have been struck once, and all of this had to happen while quality control inspectors somehow failed to notice the resulting error coins and remove them from production. The probability of all these factors aligning is astronomically small, which is precisely why these error coins are so rare and so valuable, and the fact that any examples exist at all is testament to the inevitable imperfections in any human system, no matter how well designed and carefully monitored. The cultural impact of 1982 error quarter discoveries has extended far beyond the numismatic community, capturing public imagination and inspiring media coverage that has introduced millions of people to the concept that ordinary-looking coins can harbor extraordinary value. Each time a 1982 error quarter sells at auction for a record price, the story generates news coverage in mainstream media outlets, not just specialized coin publications, And these stories typically emphasize the treasure hunt aspect of coin collecting and the possibility that valuable coins might be hiding in circulation or in old collections waiting to be discovered. This media attention has several effects. It increases public awareness of error coins and encourages more people to examine their coins carefully rather than spending them without inspection. It drives more people to submit coins for professional authentication when they find something unusual. And it reinforces numismatics as a legitimate hobby and investment category worthy of serious attention and significant capital allocation. The broader cultural message is that extraordinary value can hide in plain sight in everyday objects, that knowledge and attention to detail can be rewarded with life-changing discoveries, and that the past continues to offer up treasures for those patient and persistent enough to search for them. The authentication and certification process for coins potentially worth hundreds of millions of dollars involves the highest levels of numismatic expertise and the most sophisticated analytical techniques available, because at these value levels, the financial incentive to create fakes is enormous, and the consequences of mistakenly certifying a fake as genuine would be catastrophic for the grading service's reputation. When a potential 1982 error quarter is submitted to PCGS or NGC for authentication, it undergoes examination by multiple expert numismatists who independently assess the coin and must reach consensus before certification is granted. The examination includes detailed microscopic inspection of all design elements, die characteristics, and surface features to verify that the errors are genuine mint errors rather than post-mint damage or artificial alterations. Weight and specific gravity testing verifies that the metal composition matches what would be expected based on the claimed planchet type. Advanced imaging techniques, including X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, may be employed to definitively determine metal composition without damaging the coin. Die variety attribution specialists may be consulted to verify that the die characteristics match known dies from 1982 quarter production. And if there's any doubt or disagreement among experts, additional consultation with outside specialists or museum curators might be sought before final certification is granted. Only after this exhaustive process is complete will the coin be sealed in a tamper-evident holder with a label documenting all relevant information, and only then can it be sold with confidence that it is exactly what it purports to be. The 1982 quarter dollar, with its extraordinary value of $633 million and its spectacular combination of multiple dramatic errors, represents the absolute pinnacle of what we've been discussing throughout this video, the ultimate example of how mistakes during coin production can create objects of incredible rarity and value that transcend their original intended purpose as simple currency. This coin embodies everything that makes numismatics such a compelling hobby and such a potentially lucrative pursuit. The combination of historical significance, extreme rarity, visual drama, and financial value creates an object that appeals simultaneously to our intellectual curiosity, our aesthetic sense, our collector's instinct, and our financial interest. The fact that such coins can still potentially be discovered, hiding in old collections or theoretically even in circulation despite their obvious errors, maintains the treasure hunt excitement that keeps millions of people examining their coins carefully and dreaming about making a life-changing discovery. And the stories of ordinary people who have found these valuable error coins, people who weren't professional numismatists or wealthy collectors but simply individuals who paid attention and got lucky, provide inspiration and hope that anyone could potentially make such a discovery if they're knowledgeable, observant, and persistent enough. The 1982 quarter dollar stands as the ultimate goal for quarter collectors, the crown jewel that everyone hopes to find but almost nobody ever will, and that combination of desire and impossibility is what creates the astronomical values we've been discussing and what ensures that these coins will remain objects of fascination and pursuit for generations to come. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.